Good morning. Happy opening day. Ramos, we will start with you. All right, great. Cool. Yes, love it. Good morning. We're starting a bit late. We've had technical problems here. If there are folks on WebEx today with us, my understanding is that you can hear me, but we cannot hear you. And so I don't have any capacity to take online verbal testimony, but you can still submit written testimony to us at
testimony@baltimorecity.gov.
testimony@baltimorecity.gov. Is it really that simple?
Yeah.
Okay. Our staff member Tony will put a note to that effect in the chat on WebEx. I'm Ryan Dorsey. I'm the chair of the Land Use and Transportation Committee. Did I say it's opening day? Happy opening day, everybody. It is March 26, 2026. To my left, we have the vice chair of the committee, vice president of the city council, Sharon Green Middleton. How are you doing, Councilwoman?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
To my far left, we have Councilmember Parker.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
We have Councilmember Blanchard.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
To my far right, we have Councilwoman Porter. Next to her, we have Councilman Gray. And to my immediate right, we have our staff member, Tony Leva. Tony, good morning.
Good morning, sir. Happy opening day.
We have with us Councilwoman Ramos, who is going to present the first bill on the agenda today, as well as representatives from a whole slew of city agencies. I see housing, I see small business, I see DOT, BPD, finance, planning, law, fire, BMZA, and I see the mayor's office amply represented here. Thank you to the members of the public who are joining us and everybody who's been patient with us online and in person this morning as we are getting started late. We have 3 bills that were announced for 9 o'clock, and then one more that was announced for 10 o'clock. So if we have to, we will take a brief recess in order to begin that one on smoke shop. Zoning uses, smoke shop will begin at or after 10 o'clock. Today,
I just had a note from somebody who's with us online. They cannot hear us at all either, and the chat was disabled, so they couldn't chat to tell Tony that. So just sharing the information.
We are fixing it. Sorry. Hang on 1 second. They told me they could hear us. So I don't know what the issue is. We're working on it. Starting privileges for everybody.
apparently
They
our
could hear us before, but now they can't for some reason.
problems are not entirely resolved here.
I'm very sorry.
They could hear us before. We were once heard.
This was the settings before, right? Audio settings. Yeah.
When I talk, the volume's there. Is the chat enabled on WebEx? Let's start with that.
Julianne can hear us.
Okay, you can hear us on WebEx.
And now we can hear it again.
Okay.
Okay, people are messaging me, they can hear us.
Okay, great. Okay, good. We're confirmed. Okay, great. We will begin with Council Bill 250136, rezoning 3009 Greenmount Avenue. Councilwoman Ramos is the sponsor and will present the bill to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
And thank you to my colleagues. I'm Councilwoman Ramos, representing the 14th District. I'm asking for your favorable report on this bill. The property in question, you may know, as you drive up Greenmount Avenue, there's a large church on the 3000 block of Greenmount Avenue, and it's actually been subdivided into 3 parts, and the third part is the parish house, which has been given basically from the Episcopal Diocese, which is no longer on the site. That's a closed church. The Episcopal Diocese has given the property over to an organization called the Baltimore Italian Center, and they are in the process of revitalizing that building to be really just an amazing resource for our community. It will have cooking classes, there'll be event space. There's also going to be their commercial kitchen. So it's really an amazing place. And I have to say that my predecessor had a vision that this entire campus, if the church ever left, would be a place where the residents could come and enjoy, come together, and also get the resources that they may need. So this fits in well. I actually was the one who begged and pleaded the Baltimore Italian Center and the Episcopal Diocese to come together and try to figure out a best way to utilize the space. And so Monica LaPenta from the Baltimore Italian Center is here to answer any questions. Relative to this, right now, that church, those 3 parcels are zoned R6. As you know, churches can be in whatever zoning. We are asking for a rezoning of just that 1 parcel to C2 to be able to do all the uses that I just talked about. It's the most flexible zoning. There are other C1 and C2s along the Greenmount corridor, so it's not, something that's totally foreign to the area. As you know, criteria for a zoning change like this is whether it's a mistake or whether there's a change in the neighborhood. It's not a mistake. It's definitely, this is part of the revitalization of the entire corridor and necessary for our neighborhood that is, that's doing a positive change. So, and the finding of facts are in the Planning Commission's report that reflect that. And I'm asking for your favorable report. This is an amazing project. And once we're up and running, we'd love to invite everybody to come. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Can you just say that one last time about the finding of facts? This would be under the change or mistake rule. I would assume that this is a change.
That's correct.
Greenmount Avenue has had substantial change and
Yes.
new and reinvestment
That's
in recent
correct.
years.
Yes.
That makes sense to me.
And it also fits with the land use map that was passed by the council before. It's very consistent with the vision and work that we want to do on Greenmount, and there's substantial changes that have happened, and this would be appropriate zoning.
We love a visionary general land use map. Thank you. I have no questions.
One quick one.
Councilwoman Middleton.
Just one quick one, and there's ample parking, because I guess this is an old church.
That's correct.
It's been around. And
Yes.
there are some churches in the city that want to tear down things for parking lots, but they already have their parking in place.
That's correct. Yep. There's if you're coming up north on Greenmount before you get to Old York Road, there's 2 gates, and you go in, and there's parking in the front of the building, as well as in front of the parish hall. There's also on-street parking on Greenmount, so it's plenty of parking in the area for residents and also for visitors. And we're working with the Episcopal Diocese on uses for the other buildings, but this is one that I think will anchor, the entire project. So thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a great project.
Thanks. And I just think it's important to keep in mind that, rezoning isn't for a specific use or a specific user. We're making this a C2 zone property. Anybody who becomes a future owner of this property or the current owner of the property, if they want to do anything that is permitted under the C2 zoning, they have the ability to do that. Love it. Love me an upzoning.
And Mr. Chair, if I can add, we did go through that process with the community, the Better Waverly community, and Able across the street. And so understanding that a rezoning is not just for this one piece, but for the future, and everybody's fine with that.
Great. Anything else for the sponsor? Okay, great. Thank you. Bill reports. Law Department.
Good morning, Desiree Lucky on behalf of the Law Department. We approve this bill for form and legal sufficiency.
Great, thank you. Planning Department?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Eric Teeser for the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission reviewed this bill in their meeting of February 12th, where they recommended favorable. As the lead sponsor mentioned, this is a reasonable and rational thing, and all the details for the findings are in our report.
No, you don't feel compelled to stand up there.
I'm here to answer any questions.
All right, I figured. Feel free to do it at a desk if you want. BMZA.
Justin Williams, Interim Director of the BMZA, no objection.
Thank you. DOT?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Christian McNeil with DOT. We stand by our bill report without recommendation.
Thank you. And DHCD?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason Wright, representing DHCD. We stand behind our favorable bill report.
Great, thank you. Where are all of your Orioles hats? Okay, sorry. Yeah, there you go. Did you have something? Okay, any questions from the committee for any of our agencies here? Okay, on behalf of the sponsor, I will submit the findings of fact from the Planning Commission to be adopted by the committee, generally understanding that this is to be rezoned under the standard for a change that has occurred in the surrounding area, that this property is left a certain outlier. Before I do that, I want to ask if there's any public testimony on this bill. Anybody here to testify? No need to. We can take a vote and it's fine. Okay, great. Then I will move the Planning Commission's finding of facts to rezone this on the basis of a change in the surrounding area. All in favor of adopting the finding of facts, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Abstain? Great. The finding of facts will be recommended for adoption of the council. There are no amendments for this bill. I will move the bill favorable. All in favor of recommending this bill favorable, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Abstain? Great. This bill will be recommended favorable to the City Council at its next meeting.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Sponsor. All right, great. Do we have a representative here from 1118 North Carey Street?
Yeah. Is he online? I see him online. No, he's not. There's no Derek Shaw.
Okay, we don't have Derek Shaw here. They submitted all their advertising.
Yes.
And this is the one that we, okay, I'm going to proceed to hear this bill despite not having anybody here to represent it. Committee members, just as a reminder, we expect to have somebody to represent the bills, preferably and primarily the sponsor, but we seem to have a problem of applicants not showing up for bill hearings, and we want to make sure that we emphasize this to our applicants to get them to show up for their hearings so that they can get us to give them permissions. I'm going to hear this bill as I have done in the past because somebody spent money to do public posting on the building and advertising, and all the more so because this looks from the photos to be a pretty derelict building, and I want to get it put back into productive use. I'm going to hear it. We're not going to vote it today. We will hold off on a vote until whenever our next meeting is. So, Council Bill 250128, zoning conditional use conversion of a single-family dwelling unit to 3 dwelling units in the R8 zoning district, 1118 North Carey Street. I will just go straight to the bill reports. Law Department.
Desiree Lucky on behalf of the Law Department. We approve this bill and we defer to the Planning Department's recommendations for the amendments to the bill.
Okay, great, thank you. BMZA,
No objection.
DOT,
Mr. Chair, Christian McNeil with DOT without recommendation.
thank you. Housing,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason Hessler, Deputy Commissioner for Permits and Litigation. I actually need to look into this property a little bit further. It wasn't until this hearing I looked at it, and it is in a group of properties that is identified for demolition. So it's one of, I believe, 8 or 9 contiguous vacant buildings. So I need to look a little bit further into it.
it's identified by whom for demolition?
The city of Baltimore.
Because it has a vacant building notice on it that hasn't been abated for
Sometime.
some
yes.
time, and there's been litigating action on it to solidify that we're in the clear to proceed with demolition?
Wouldn't be litigation, but yes.
Yeah,
It would
okay,
be-
some legal process.
Yes.
Can you, I'll go to the fire department, I'll go to planning commission, but can you give me any sort of dates related to that when I come back to you in a minute? Okay, great, thanks. Fire department?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Captain Dennis Dawson. Fire Department has no objections, provides compliance with building fire-related codes of Baltimore City, all codes and ordinances.
Great. It's a little unusual to refer these bills to the fire department. Do you have any idea why this one might have been referred to you? Is there anything unique about
More than
this?
likely because anything that's past a two-family dwelling and land access, fire department access, code compliance may be part of the reason.
We hear them all the time and they're just not referred to. Okay, this is unique. I'm looking at somebody over here. Planning commission.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. This bill was reviewed by the Planning Commission in their meeting of February 5th, and we have an amendment in, which is just a technical correction. One of the little-known rules in the zoning code, Title 15-302, for measurement of density. Whenever you have 3 or more units, half of a lot area rounds up, so it's actually 2.5 times the 500 square feet of lot area per unit. So that only means that 1,250 square feet of lot area is required versus the 1,500 quoted in the bill, and that actually reduces the needed variance amount to only 12%. And with that amendment, the Planning Commission recommended favorable.
Okay, I'm looking for, do we have that amendment from DLR?
We do.
We do.
Orange tab.
Orange tab. Okay, great. So that's in here. I see. That strikes the 1,500 and substitutes 1,250. Is there something unique about this property that,
No, I mean, we were looking forward to a building being brought back to productive use. Mr. Shaw has come in a couple of times on a couple of other properties. He's an area resident and does some renovation development on the side. So we viewed it as a generally good thing to put the building back into use, but we'll defer to housing if they have an overriding need.
Okay, great. Then Jason is still out in the hall trying to get that information that I asked him for. We will just recess this bill and I'll get that information from him whenever he has it. I already asked if there was anybody here to testify for this bill, so we don't have anybody to testify. That's all of our bill reports. Yeah, okay, well, we will just recess this bill. Okay. We heard Council Bill 250145, commercial vehicle parking, last week. I am the sponsor of this bill. We were more or less prepared to vote it last week, but I had a couple of reconsiderations about the statement and the setting of penalties on the last page of the bill, and have had an additional amendment drafted for that. So committee members, I think we all recall this bill. I want to bring it back up for a vote, and I'll just review the amendments before we take a vote on the amendments. So amendment number 1 adjusts and makes simpler the fines for violating the 2 commercial vehicle parking prohibitions in this portion of the code. One pertains to parking parking commercial vehicles in residential areas for more than an hour, unless they are being imminently used for loading or unloading or work in the immediate area. And the other is for parking of commercial vehicles on city streets in general during nighttime hours, 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. And the 2 penalties of $500 and $250 are penalty levels that already exist for violations of these 2 provisions, but which were kind of unclear and kind of jumbled together as to which applies to which situation. And so the penalties that we have here in these amendments are that your very large commercial vehicles, federal highway classification 6 or higher, box trucks and semi-trailers and things like that are very large, those are a $500 fine for parking, for either violating either provision, the stopping by residents or the nighttime hours. And lesser commercial vehicles, including trailers and vehicles with trailers attached, would be a $250 fine. And in the mix was this other old provision about a $75 violation that was just kind of generic, and so we're taking that out entirely. And so that's amendment number 1 pertaining to fines. Amendment number 2 is an exception to certain provisions of the bill that was put forth by the parking authority that addressing vehicles with trailers attached. It makes an exception for those trailers that are for transportation of disability mobility devices like wheelchairs. There are some special trailers that are used, I think particularly for like heavy battery operated electric motorized wheelchairs. And so those would be exempted from the prohibition of vehicles having trailers attached. Amendment number 3 strikes redundant language. The provision it pertains to already says no parking of commercial vehicles between these nighttime hours, 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. And the old provision said no parking for more than 1 hour during those hours. And for the practicality of being able to enforce this at all, it just is being changed from no more than 1 hour to sort of at all. But we don't need the words for any purpose or period of time in order to make that point. We can just simply say no parking between 1 and 7 a.m. And then Amendment 4 changes a provision that exempts against enforcement that says that was specific to vehicles with detached trailers, which didn't really make sense. It just makes it a catch-all for any vehicle that is imminently loading, unloading. So if you are a long-haul trucker and your destination is some warehouse where you're unloading at 3 or 4 in the morning, or where you are somebody stopping or parking in an industrial area, loading up produce to deliver to grocery stores at 2 in the morning, the general prohibition of parking that commercial vehicle on the street during those late night hours would be exempted if you are there imminently loading or unloading that vehicle. And so this creates a general exemption for that purpose. Are there any questions about these amendments? Great, thank you. I will move the amendments. There being no kind of questions or issues, I take it we're going to be okay to vote them as a package together. So I will just move all 4 of these amendments. All in favor of approving these amendments, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Abstain? Great. The amendments pass. I will move the bill favorable with these amendments. All in favor of moving the bill favorable with amendments, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Abstain? Great. Thank you. This bill will be recommended favorable to the council at its next meeting. We still have a couple of minutes here before I can begin the hearing on the smoke shops. And so I'll just use this moment to check back about implementation of the commercial vehicle parking changes with finance, DOT, BPD. There are going to need to be some changes made to the handheld devices that are used for conducting parking enforcement. Who is in charge of making those changes?
So, Mr. Chair, Tyler Chanella, Mayor's office, that once the bill passes, the implementation is going to go through the City Administrator's office to coordinate the agencies.
Okay, but we asked at the last hearing just to have an understanding of like who is actually in charge. The city administrator herself is not going to do that. Somebody in the city administrator's office is not going to actually make the change. We want to just make sure that the agencies know who actually makes such changes and that they are aware this is coming and that they're going to be prepared to do that. And I know that our agencies said that they were looking into that, and I want to give them an opportunity to just respond to say, Finance, Gabe?
I'm Gabriel Stewart-Sykowicz, legislative analyst for the finance department. We don't do the enforcement side of things, but in terms of collecting it, the Bureau of Revenue Collections is aware that this bill is coming, and as soon as we say, hey, this bill is going to be approved, they'll be able to make the changes on our side of things.
And does finance have to change something in their system about like, right now, the commercial vehicle fines are like commercial vehicle parking violation, 20,000 pounds and above, or
Yeah, it's just a
commercial
minor-
vehicle under 20,000 pounds?
Correct. It would just be a very minor change to the system.
Okay.
That
and-
wouldn't require that much time to implement.
Okay, great. And does DOT make the changes in the handheld themselves, or do they rely on BCIT for that?
It would be a joint effort,
Okay,
so.
okay. And is BPD using the handheld devices, or is BPD still using paper to issue citations?
Kara Ashburn on behalf of BPD. No, we currently do not use, excuse me, currently do not use the handheld devices, but we do have our citation books. So there's a section of the citation book that has a spot for like an other, and we can write in any city ordinance that we need to enforce in
Okay.
that citation book.
Great. And can we get some assurance that there's going to be like a memo or some sort of training or something for all officers to be just aware of this change and how to identify?
Yeah.
The other thing is with the changes in this law, one of the practical improvements we are making here is to make it really easily visually identifiable which vehicles fall into which categories. And so we want to make sure that people are aware of that federal highway classification chart. Tyler, can we just make sure that the mayor's office and the city administrator's office are able to disseminate that and really lean on that as something to assist in prompt and proper implementation and training?
Yeah, I can have the city administrator issue like a guidance to the agencies.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. All right, it's 10 a.m. exactly, 10:01 even. So we will move on now to our final bill on the agenda today. Council Bill 250114, zoning uses smoke shop. Councilman Blanchard, would you like to come take the floor?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, colleagues. A very happy opening day to all those who celebrate. This is a very good day that I'm really excited about. This is something that me, the council president's office, several of our colleagues have been working on this package of bills with smoke shops for quite a while, since last summer. So I'm really excited that we are getting able to present it, to have this hearing today. In short, smoke shops and vape shops are at the heart of the vaping crisis with our youth, which is one of the biggest public health crises we've seen in our young people in the last several decades. They tend to be very cheaply rolled out, almost intentionally unattractive, ugly establishments, and they are directly crowding out the types of businesses that we want in our main streets. I have a block on the west side of downtown. The 200 block of West Saratoga has 5 smoke shops on the one block. Within 2 blocks of Cross Street Market, we have, I think, 8, possibly 9 actively open smoke shops. There's nothing unique to my district about this, as we've heard from multiple of our other colleagues. So what this bill is looking to do is to halt the very rapid proliferation of these establishments in the city. And we have gotten almost nothing but support and encouragement from both my colleagues on the council and any member of the public who has reached out about this. Just so the committee knows, we went into this, there are some Some parts of the bill, like the minimum distances between two smoke shops and between a smoke shop and a school, park, or rec center, that we sort of looked at and said, hey, we think this makes sense, but we are actively going in, looking forward to getting feedback from the community, from colleagues, from the different agencies, from our state partners. And so there are several amendments, which we can talk about in a bit, but so we are still, welcoming other considerations and whatnot. But I think what we have before us today is a very good bill for the city, and a good set of amendments that tackles the main feedback that we've gotten from partners. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for bringing this bill to us. I want to make sure that I have a good, clear review of the bill here for the record and for everybody here. There are just basically three components to this bill. There's one that defines a smoke shop as having to meet three criteria, or one of each of three categories of criteria. One is the general description of a business that sells this kind of stuff. Two, has any of four of the licenses that the state of Maryland issues for tobacco products, electronic smoking devices retailer, vape shop vendor, or just a general cigarette business license. And three, has to devote a certain portion of its retail space, 10% or more of its, you have an amendment for this, 10 linear feet?
Yes, sir, yeah. So we got some great feedback from the Planning Commission and BMZA that 10% of the square footage is a difficult thing for an inspector to go in and look and verify. But so just bring in 10, we made it 10 linear feet. So that way an inspector can just come in with a tape measure, right? And say, okay, this is more or less, you either are in the smoke shop category because you have more than 10 feet or you don't, right? So that is in the amendment, but yes, otherwise that's a good description of the bill.
Yeah, I went into a smoke shop on Greenmount Avenue last weekend while I was out for breakfast with my wife, and because she loves when I do stuff like that. I went into the smoke shop just to see the stuff that they were selling, all of which we just had this hearing on like 2 days before about this oversight hearing. And what I took away is everything that is legal, meaning that it is FDA regulated as like a tobacco product, and is licensed to be sold under one of the state's licenses, is behind the counter on a wall out of reach from customers, which I think is probably a requirement of the state license. And then everything that is illegal is what's occupying the glass casing, the 10 or more linear feet of it, because that's not regulated under the state law on selling tobacco, because it's not approved tobacco or nicotine devices. And in some cases, it's also illegal cannabis products that are not that are not approved by the state to be sold. And so because they fall outside of anybody's regulation structure, they just like, hey, we can display this right there in front of people, and that's what they give these glass casings to. It's really crazy, but there is so much more of that than the legal products that they sell.
It is wild how many illegal things are being sold out of many of these establishments, yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it's really easy to measure 10 linear feet when you can just put a tape measure at one end of a glass case and walk it down to the other.
Yes, sir.
Comment from the Vice Chair.
Yes. Another interesting story listening to this. So we already have a problem also with our food deserts. Mm-hmm. And I have, in the food desert, there is one small grocery store right on West Cold Spring. And the smoke shop popped up in that grocery store. And the things that the chair just mentioned, just imagine, now it's really a mess, I'd say, because we have the the grocery store took a space to have a smoke shop in an area that is already, we're trying to, get rid of crime, there's gang activity, and they added that in the grocery store. So the interesting piece with that is that and you had mentioned all the things that are illegal around it. I haven't actually been inside that store, but because we already have some bills on the books on having keeping the glass open, you only can put, there's things on the books that where you have to show a certain amount of glass. And you can't sit paraphernalia in sight. The person is supposed to come in and ask for top paper and things like that as well. So it's just adding more problems to the problems we already have. So I really appreciate you keeping this on the forefront and trying to get this resolved.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I was just remembering that I should probably report the Lion Smoke Shop on Greenmount Avenue to the ATCC. They have a tip line. If there are illegally operating smoke shops in your neighborhood selling illegal cannabis products in particular, you can report these to the state's Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis Commission. There is a tip website that you can use to do that.
Mr. Chair, you talked about the definition aspect of the bill. Do you also want to talk about the minimum distance?
Yep, and then so the second part of the bill, so the first part of the bill is the definition, how we understand one to be a smoke shop. And the second part is about the distance. There are two different distance factors. One is how close in proximity or how far they have to be from any school, recreation center, or park. And the other is the distance between smoke shops themselves, one smoke shop and the next. So the distance for schools, recreation centers, and parks is set at 500 in the bill, but I believe that we have an amendment to change that to 1,000.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and to talk about that one specifically, this was some feedback. I think the council president's team had brought this up based off of a state ATCC report where we only have 38 smoke shops within 500 feet of schools in the city. I say only as if that wasn't a big number already. And that's basically within a block and a half from our schools. But we have 253 smoke shops within 1,000 feet. So effectively 3 blocks of a school, which is an incredible and absolutely ridiculous amount. And that is, I think, more than half, or right at about half of the smoke shops within that distance from a school in the state of Maryland reside in the city. And so Council President made the recommendation to amend that distance from 500 feet to 1,000 feet. I said that absolutely makes a ton of sense. So that is one of our amendments.
Great, thank you. And then the third part of the bill is just it's just the tables telling us where any smoke shop can be. Several of these tables are included here just to demonstrate that smoke shop is not included, right? So the way that the zoning code is written is that if a table doesn't include a use, then that use is not allowed in the zoning category. So we have the table here for open space districts, for permitted and conditional uses. And you can see in here that smoke shop does not appear in the open space category. You can't open a smoke shop in a city park because you also can't open one within 1,000 feet of a city park.
Right.
There are tables to cover the residential zoning districts. Obviously, we're not going to allow for smoke shops to exist in residential districts where, in general, commercial uses are not allowed.
Yeah, and specifically to that one, Mr. Chair, I will say that something that I've seen in a lot of my neighborhoods, particularly in the north and northwestern part of my district, and then a lot of the areas in West Baltimore, just adjacent to me, is these corner retail properties that are actually they're row homes that are zoned R8 and they're neighborhood commercial, right? And a lot of them would fit into the smoke shop category, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from constituents in my district, in the greater Upton area, as well as a couple neighborhoods near there, where that is a particular frustration to residents to have this pop up next door to your house.
And the allowable uses for any neighborhood commercial have to be explicitly listed as allowable in neighborhood commercial areas. And so this isn't being added to the list of the kinds of businesses that can exist under the neighborhood commercial standard.
Correct. We're creating the category
Right.
of smoke shop and then not adding it to this
Not
list.
adding it to the
Yeah.
list for neighborhood commercial. Great. And then, so we have it as conditional by board, so requiring a zoning board hearing in any and all of the commercial zone categories. And then in the industrial areas, not in the industrial areas, correct? And a couple other tables here, so I won't go through all the tables, but Councilman Parker has had his hand up for a few minutes. We'll go to Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councilperson Dorsey, for bringing this bringing this to us. We were chatting a little bit, and Councilperson Chair Dorsey mentioned this as well. So we currently have smoke shops which are selling illegal products, and many of them are also unlicensed to even sell the legal products, right? So many of them are illegal shops selling legal products and also selling illegal products, right? So there's all kind of layers here to this. The question is, in this case, and given that you mentioned how many folks, for example, this is even setting aside the ones that don't have state licenses, but of places that are legally operating, and let's assume for the sake of benefit, selling legal products and nothing illegal.
They exist.
Yeah, they exist. But they're going to violate the 1,500 between other smoke shops. They're going to violate the 1,000 to parks and schools and all the rest. No impact here.
They will be grandfathered in.
Grandfathered in. Will they still have to apply? Will they still have to apply though to kind of get this checkbox of this use category? Because they're not going to. Their use can their existence can be grandfathered in, but they will still have to wave their hand and say, hey, we are a smoke shop.
That is a good question. We don't, kind of what we were talking about earlier, and I think this would be probably a question for the agencies, but.
Sure. We can hold that off till after your report.
Yeah, my understanding of it is, based off the conversation with Deputy Commissioner Hessler, there's not a built-in business license anyway. And so I don't, I'm a legally operating smoke shop and I've been licensed and selling legal products and doing everything the way I'm supposed to be. And there's not, just because we're creating the land use category doesn't mean that they have to go to the city for something, but I'll hold off for the agencies to better answer.
I'll be interested to hear what the agents have to say, but I understand it's not a license, but it is a use category, and the use category has to align with the use that's actually there. And so I'm curious if they'll have to catch up on the use side of it. Even if we're not going to deny their continuation of that use. The second question I have, and maybe it's for you, maybe again it's also it'll be back to our folks. But for shops that are open, but are open illegally, right, that don't have state licenses to do what they're doing, they wouldn't be grandfathered in. Instead, we'd be using this bill to crack down and essentially shut them down.
It would make it, the way I see it, is it will make it more obvious that those shops are not operating right. You would, as the council member, would be just going by and saying, hey, this shop is here, and I know that shop's right over there. This one that just popped up, that clearly that's within the minimum distance. So it would make it, I think, more obvious for all parties involved that a new smoke shop, if they're operating within the minimum distances, that they are not operating legally and have not gone through the proper process.
No, absolutely. I was thinking about
they also would have to. Sorry, I have to say they would also be would have to go through the BMZA process, right?
Right. I was also especially thinking about those folks who don't have state licenses, and obviously there's state penalties for that, but they wouldn't be grandfathered in. Like, be like, I've been here for 5 years. Yeah, you've been here for 5 years illegally, so
yeah, I'd like to
you're not
talk.
grandfathered into that use.
Yeah, we could talk more about that later.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the sponsor before we go to bill reports? Great, let's do bill reports.
Mr. Chair, do I go
Yeah.
back now? I stay up here. Okay.
Okay. We'll start with the law department.
Thank you, Chair. Jeff Hochstetler on behalf of the Law Department. The Law Department can approve the bill for forming legal sufficiency with the suggested amendments in its bill report. And I've seen the latest version of the amendments offered by the sponsor, and those do incorporate law suggested amendments.
And do we have laws amendments drafted by DLR?
They're in the sponsor's
They're in the
amendments.
sponsor's amendments.
Correct.
Okay, great. Okay, BMZA.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Justin Williams, Interim Director of the BMZA. I submitted the written bill report, which I can
Can you pull the
summarize.
mic a little closer to you, please?
I submitted the written bill report, which I can summarize. The key points I wanted to hit on, touched on what Councilman Parker was raising. I think there's a couple issues to unpack. The one on the illegal sales, like that one, I feel like that is the state, or I suppose city enforcement could do that, and we maybe should do that more often now. My understanding was the law changed last year to allow the ATCC to seize any cannabis without a sticker that says from the Maryland Cannabis Administration sticker. They can go in and immediately take action, whereas before they had to send it off for testing. So that, I think, is allowing some, I mean, we've seen more enforcement in the past year, I believe, for that reason. My follow-up question, which I don't want to put SEIU on the spot, is like, can we go back in after them to pull the UNO? Like, if we caught them on premises selling illegally cannabis or something that wasn't allowed, should we start pulling UNOs or padlocking the establishment because they were engaged in illegal sales? I think I can stop there.
Mr. Can I'll just briefly say that I do think that the property owners are extremely culpable, and we should have tools to hold them responsible. In general, there's a lot of situations where I think commercial property owners are being bad actors in the city, and we need more tools to hold them responsible just because you're not the business owner yourself. That's an intense frustration of mine. I do believe that Councilman Glover and the council president are discussing an extension of the padlock law that would apply to these types of establishments. And then I do think that not knowing what the state protections for property owners is legally and whatnot, I do think it's a great idea to consider in the future for how property owners themselves can be held accountable.
I would say on the property owner piece, yeah, you could see a landlord, especially a corporate REIT, doesn't really know what the tenant's doing. But so like my vision would be the tenant, like the operator of the business would be liable. So either, padlock that business, shut the business down, pull their business license from Mestat, and remove their ability to operate if they are committing illegal drug sales on their premises. That's the one kind of overall arching thing. And then the other kind of big piece I flagged before I go into other issues was, I think ideally there would be a license regime. This is something Eric Tisa always brings up, is that the license would be a better way to target the people, the bad actors versus the use, which is harder to be direct about. We recognize that state law kind of preempts us in this area, but maybe this is an area, because Baltimore is so unique and we have such a density of these smoke shops, that we should create a new license category, like just smoke shop. Because the other issue I see is that right now licenses from the state are just for selling tobacco. So you could be a supermarket that has a little tobacco kiosk, or you could be, I don't know, the bars that have a vending machine that has tobacco. So one of those things, and it's probably it's classified the same for our license list as what you would think of as a smoke shop with the bright lights that say smoke shop and have bongs and things that Councilman Dorsey would walk into to see when he's on Green Mountain Avenue. So like so ideally there might be another category called like smoke shop when you are what we were talking about is a primary business that is selling a bunch of tobacco and paraphernalia. So those are the big overarching pictures. The key points in the written report, one was cured on the measurement issue. I think that was the 10% gross retail floor, which would be hard to measure. I do think there could be some gamesmanship on the primarily, because I think the initial definition of how a smoke shop is considered as primarily in the business of selling tobacco and paraphernalia, but then one could foresee an example where they would say, well, it's 49% of my business is really doing other things that aren't tobacco. So it's still, I mean, it's going to be gray areas no matter what, but that's just a concern, especially as like a city permitting and zoning matter of like, if someone comes in and they are saying, no, I'm a retail goods establishment, not a smoke shop, there's not an easy way for us to know at the front end. It'd be at the back end and only in the field when stuff's happening. So that's one concern, which is why it'd be easier to do a license. The other one is what Councilman Parker also mentioned, what the baseline problem I think is going to be a bigger one than we're realizing, is that you and I know like the easy smoke shops that have the bright lights, and we can probably spot it when we know it when we see it, but if someone's applying in the zoning office, even legitimately as a smoke shop, and disclosing that, the BMZA staff and the zoning office staff wouldn't necessarily know the map of what is a smoke shop and what's just a place that sells tobacco. So we can go on that one.
Yeah. My legislative director can create that map for me, so, and we can, happy to partner with folks on that.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess, well, maybe, but I think the concern is that you wouldn't know necessarily unless you go into each store to know how many actually have a primary business of selling tobacco.
Yeah, having the way of tracking it, right. Well, we do have, yeah, I mean, we have the smoke shop category, right, that's being created. So we should be tracking that, right? Like as once we create the category, we should then see.
Going forward, I guess the concern would be existing stores that are, because right now our UNO just says retail goods establishment. Maybe they've marked off tobacco in the past year with a seller, but prior to that, we wouldn't necessarily know that the Green Mountain Avenue establishment, I suspect, just has a retail goods establishment UNO. So there's no way to easily pull the data on what is a smoke shop and what is just a place that has smoke in the name, or or might just be a bodega that looks like it, but maybe they really aren't a smoke shop because they don't have the primary sales. And then, so that leads to the third, which is the resources, this flagging that, yeah, on this and some other bills with the council's passed, which I think are thoughtful policy matters on like radiuses for dollar stores and this. It's like, I think we should be thinking about how to have more resources behind the enforcement and like the administration.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Williams. I do think that having a more comprehensive enforcement lens, I thought that was a very good recommendation for both the BMCA and the Planning Commission. I think this bill is a really strong first step, along with the oversight hearing, right, and what Senator Hayes, Delegate Young are working with the state on the state level for the strengthened Baltimore City oversight of the license. I do think that that's probably that seems like an important next step, right, where we come back 6 months, 9 months after the legislation is passed, God willing, and then we're able to say, hey, how is this being enforced? What shortfalls are we seeing? What sort of gamesmanship are we seeing? And do we have the capacity from the city personnel side, right, to do the adequate enforcement, which is always critical as well. So that's great. I thought that was probably too much and maybe a little too early to add that into this legislation.
Yeah, one more point if I may. I think that's why the perfect world would be a license regime. So like in the liquor board context, the liquor board will keep a comprehensive list, but then people have to self-report and there's more of the neighborhood notice. And so there's kind of a back and forth tracking, and they have license fees that pay for this whole apparatus to be done, to do the tracking and follow up on store and floor plan size and how much sales are happening and checking the percentage of sales. So that'd be why it'd be ideal, I think, the state to create it on their own or give us the authority to create a licensing regime for smoke shops.
I want to ask a legal question. it hadn't occurred to me until now. But so my takeaway here is that we're going to be able to grant use permits to new businesses as a conditional use if they are not in conflict with the distance requirements and such. But does that mean that all of the existing ones will continue to be operating under just like retail goods? And is there no way we can like make those businesses get a new UNO for this new category?
This is what I put in the report that I think San Antonio had sort of this.
Again, can you pull the mic closer to you?
Sorry, this is what I put in the report that I think San Antonio or some city did like you have a year to get yourself into compliance. And sort of there's, I guess, the corollary how we did liquor stores 10 years ago was similarly, you had a year to get yourself into compliance.
That's the scheme I was thinking of, is something like that, giving folks a year and saying like, not even necessarily, I mean, even if you said businesses that already exist as of the date of introduction of the bill have up to 1 year to register as this kind of business for this use, and have it not be conditional by the board. You already exist, you're grandfathered to continue existing, but you do need to have the proper category. And that would certainly aid us in being able to track these businesses for measurement. I know we haven't gone to DHCD yet, but Jason, do you have thoughts on that, or anybody?
Well, I think you would need to do something like that. I'm not sure if a year is enough time or not. I know the last time this was done was around the rezoning of liquor establishments, and that ended up being 3 years. It also ended up being litigated for another 4 years after that. So that we're just now at the point where we've been able to start shutting those businesses down. Now, some shut down on their own. This wouldn't be quite the same because you're not suggesting that they are shut down. It's just that they would have to apply and get a new use and occupancy permit
Well,
that
the idea
includes smoke
is
shop.
if you don't do it within that time frame, then we hit you with a fine for operating without a proper use permit.
Right.
Yeah,
But then after that point, like if they pass that year or 2 years or whatever it is, and they haven't applied for whatever reason, they may not qualify any longer because they might be within 500 feet of another store or a school or something of that nature.
Yep, and so page 4 of the BMZ's report mentioned the San Antonio model, which gave them 180 days, like the operators in that city, to register their status as a legal non-conforming smoke shop by affidavit. And so that would be the way, potentially, that'd be the model I think I'd recommend if you wanted to go this route of saying you have a year or you have some period of time to declare that you are legal and non-conforming, that you are a smoke shop, but you might be too close to a school or park, but you've been here in operation and you can continue. But if you don't register, then if we catch you, in year 2, then our inspector goes out with a tape measure and we think you are primarily engaged in the sale, then we would take enforcement action.
Councilman Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That seems like a good idea, assuming that we could limit it only to legally licensed establishments that are legally licensed by the state to sell these products as of the passage of the legislation, right? So if we say right, because you don't fall into this category if you're not licensed by the state in one of these, right? You're not licensed to sell tobacco or OTP or whatever, right? And so as long as we can have it say
if you meet the criteria of the definition of smoke shop in this bill.
At the day that it passes,
Right.
right? Then you would be.
I mean, we did this with short-term rentals. It wasn't even as of the date of the passage of the bill. It was as of the date of the introduction of the bill, if I recall correctly. And so, pick a date, basically. If you are operating within.
I feel a lot better about that, yeah.
Yeah, if you are operating within the definition that this bill sets out as of a date certain, then you have X period of time to get this use and occupancy without having to go through the conditional use process, because you would otherwise be grandfathered in anyway. You just have to apply and get the use and occupancy, but you have to submit information to certify essentially that you meet this criteria, that you have the state license and such. Jason?
Just listening to this, and I don't know enough about the state licensing in reference to this, but other state licensings generally require that the applicant for the state license prove to the state that they have the legal use for that area. So childcare centers, liquor stores, first have to get cannabis, well, actually not cannabis. They're, yeah. Childcare centers definitely, licensed childcare centers and liquor establishments get their use permit and then provide that to the licensing regime or board in order to get their license.
Yeah, let me tell you how much faith I have in the state to enforce that.
I'm only bringing it up to be, and maybe it's not necessarily a bad thing from this perspective, but creating a catch-22 where you can't get your license because you don't have your use permit, you can't get your use permit because you don't have your license. So just throwing that out there.
Well, I think in this case, they would have already had to get the state, they would have the retail business, general retail business, UNO, in order to be able to do this, and then that would have enabled them to get the state license as a tobacco retailer, and then they have that, and so then they can apply to have this new category.
Just one more on this one, 'cause I think this is important. I think the issue is, though, that like a supermarket probably has to get the same tobacco I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that they get the same license. That's the problem right now.
We have an amendment, you've seen the amendment, we have an amendment that addresses the concern of
Well,
these types of
from our side, but I think the problem will be for the registration. Like, we could send a list to everybody who has a tobacco license, but it'll be overbroad. It'll be everybody it'll include the supermarkets and good actors. And we'll just say, hey, everybody on this list, if you are a smoke shop, you have a year to come back to the city and say you're a smoke shop and you've been established, and have an affidavit or receipt or something to show that. But then if you don't, we're assuming you're not a smoke shop, and if we catch you on day 366, we're going to start enforcing. That'd be one way to do it. But the issue still is, I mean, ideally, it'd be the state would come up with a new license regime that captures this. Would be my ideal way to handle this, but happy to be as helpful as I can.
Do we have a city, a way as the city of Baltimore to say 180 days from 26 March 2026, any shops fitting into this category have to get some sort of use and occupancy or some sort of city license? Or would this have to be done on the state level?
I mean, I think maybe law would speak to it, but I think the issue currently is we're preempted on tobacco licensing by the state. We come up with a new license, but I think that it'd be the gray area of like how you license it that's separate from tobacco. But like you could have even retail licenses just by the state, but there'd be maybe some other license type. I think it's either the state gives us authority to create a new license just for smoke shops, or the state creates their own license at the state level for smoke shops would be, I think, the cleanest way.
Is there, yeah, I see the preemption potential problem. Is there a way, can't we just go out and identify where the legally operating smoke, can't we just literally make a map and somewhere in the city that map exists?
I mean, the issue is, so we would need, I mean, even if we Googled the smoke shops Baltimore, we wouldn't know for certain that it has the floor area and is primarily engaged in the sale of tobacco as defined in this law. So that'd be the gray area. So you probably could catch most, but not all, and then maybe you'd be overbroad. Maybe some people are classified as a smoke shop, but they're really a bodega, or they're a cigar shop or something. So That would be the concern about us making a draft on our own versus people having to register, and that would generate the map.
Mr. Tiso.
If you're ready, Mr. Chair, I can give, the Planning Commission reviewed this bill in their meeting of November 20th, where they recommended approval, but they did raise a few things for the council to think about, and I'll try and touch on a few things that we've discussed up to this point. So first, they brought up three items for the council to consider in that how will this new use and definition impact properties with multiple approved land uses, such as grocery stores? How will these provisions be enforced, and what's the practical ability for the city to enforce them? And considering definitions, how will they affect primary and accessory uses and measurement methodology by floor area? So some of these have been addressed in the amendments. I would echo Director Williams' concern about the primarily word. Over 26 years in working with this, I've played lots of cats and mouses games in zoning definitions. And I will foot stomp, zoning is a broad tool that can be difficult to use. It gets at the general what, but not the who. So that's where licensing is usually the preferred tool. And I understand the difficulty of the preemption issue. But we would be concerned over that primarily discussion in that it may be too easy for some actors of malintent to dodge the definition because in page 2 of the amendment, it talks about where tobacco products is secondary to the establishment and sets less than 25% of the establishment's revenue. I don't know that that's an easy way for us, the city, to say, show me your books, even at a relatively lower threshold than alcohol, which I believe is at 50%. It would just be difficult to do. So I'd also want to acknowledge Austin Davis, my colleague is behind me. He staffed this bill and is far more read up on the license piece of this. And after seeing this amendment last night, I also want to acknowledge Nick O'Gara in our GIS shop, who frequently answers very unreasonable questions with very short deadlines for me. He pulled together a map that buffered all of the licensees that we were able to get from the state in all the categories. Putting the 500-foot separation from the parks, rec centers, and schools, and the 1,500-foot buffer from those known licensees. That took out a lot of the commercial zoning across the city, to a significant proportion. Increasing that to 1,000 feet from the disqualifying uses leaves single-digit percentages of commercial zoning available for any potentially new applicant.
Oh, darn.
Sorry?
Oh, darn.
Yeah, that may be a feature and not a bug. I'm just highlighting that because it will have the effect of predominantly zoning out the use. To answer Councilman Parker's question, there's a provision in the code, I don't have a full computer in front of me, but basically where you have a permitted use that is reclassified as conditional, it's allowed to continue. So if you have a retail goods establishment, you're selling things, we now define a subset of that you're selling things, you're allowed to continue. Now the question then is a good one of if the definition requires a license, that would break it for those that are selling these products without the appropriate license. However, if you have a use and occupancy permit for a retail goods establishment and you have appropriate licensing for the controlled products, then you would be, in essence, allowed to continue as a grandfathered use. So hopefully that answers that question, and I'll pause there for confirmation. So there's a bunch of concerns here that we have heard of how to address these things. I'll also note that if you are a use that exists today, but there is a problem, or if you cease operations, many of them are well within that 1,500 feet from each other, so they would be losing that use and not eligible to reopen. So there's a couple of policy decisions that need to be made here of if we remove the primarily language and or adjust the percentages that are involved, that will cast a wider net that will catch more grocery stores or other types of stores, which aggravates that availability issue because of the separation from one another. Again, that's a policy decision. So we're here to help sort all of this out. I don't know that sitting here I have great recommendations on exactly what the wording needs to be, but we're happy to support however we may.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Tiso. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Okay, thanks. A note towards the 1,000 feet from the excludable distances amendment. We still have, I think it's roughly 2,500 of the 16,000 commercially zoned parcels in the city would be able to have it. So it's not, there's 2,500 locations that would be allowed from schools, parks, and rec centers is the numbers that we pulled for that. So I feel like that's, there's still plenty of room. This is not a ban. And then a question to your concern about these like secondary use establishments, because I do, right, we don't want to make, right, grocery stores already can't sell beer and wine right in the city of Baltimore, right? And so having, like a little display case in the back of the store that has it, some small, right, thing, which is normal to grocery stores everywhere, we certainly don't want to preclude that. The amendment, when you were bringing up that concern, the point about exclusions, in my first amendment, I know this is, does that still feel as though that's a potential issue?
I'm just raising it as a concern because part of our job is to make sure that the language as drafted does what you're intending to do. So if there is an escape path where if I were an actor of ill intent and I were to claim that my sales of the controlled products are below the threshold, 25%, pick a number, then I'm not a smoke shop by definition. I'm just a retail goods establishment and I can continue. So I understand that there's, a genuine cigar shop tobacconist is not the target here. I understand the need to separate that out. I just am raising the question of, is the threshold contemplated here going to do the thing that you want, or are we going to continue to play cat and mouse because we see that occasionally?
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I am fully under the assumption that there will need to be this is not the end of the conversation, and there will be, when there's money to be made, the mice will do mice things, however you'd say that. And I think what we have is a very substantial improvement on putting these guardrails in this legislation. And then so I think the path forward is to pass this and then to be very attuned to what types of ways people are trying to sneak out of it and then address that accordingly.
And we're happy to help.
Thank you very much.
I'll just say for my part, I realize zoning is a blunt tool and not really the perfect instrument to address the problem at hand. And that words like primarily are open to some interpretation. I also am like a believer that I know porn when I see it. And that it's reasonable for people to go, yeah, come on, look at this place. Primarily, they're selling tobacco kind of products. I don't know. And cross that bridge when we come to it, when somebody challenges the weight with which we're leaning on the word primarily in some enforcement action. Okay, so let's continue here. I want to make sure that we get through the rest of our bill reports here. I'm going to go to small business.
Good morning. Christopher Lundy, Director of Mayor's Office of Small and Minority Business Advocacy and Development. We stand by our bill report and have no objection to the amendments.
Great, thank you. Finance?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Gabriel Stewart-Sikowitz here for the Finance Department. We do not oppose this legislation. In order to estimate the volume of new tobacco licenses that would then go through the BMZA, we reached out to the State License Bureau, which is a Bureau of the Comptroller of Maryland. They were able to provide us a list of all the licenses issued in Baltimore City of the 4 mentioned in the bill between 2014 and 2025. The average was 234. I will note that a year. We did note that there in our bill report that there's a lot of change in ownership and change of operatorship. However, we assumed that the bill was targeting newly established licenses rather than just someone who is changing the ownership of the smoke shop. In 2015, there was a large amount of licenses issued. If you exclude that, the average is still going to be high. It's going to be around 119 licenses every year. We then discussed with BMZA if they would need, what level they would need a new or some assistance with working on all of the spatial analysis. And so they said around 30 new applicants a year. Since 119 is very high, is much higher than 30, we are estimating that they will need a GIS analyst. That analyst will be, with all included, will be around $106,000 a year, all included. We also recognize that this legislation will have costs that are difficult to quantify in terms of revenues and expenditures for the city, as well as impacts on city residents. The de-densification of smoke shops and reduced youth exposure to tobacco and other illegal products will lead to healthier outcomes.
Thank you. Jason, I know that we've heard a bit from housing here. We'll go to housing on the bill report specifically.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason Wright, and to my left, Deputy Commissioner Jason Hessler. Both Jasons representing DHCD today. We stand behind our favorable report. I would say my caveat to that is we do understand the very legitimate concerns brought up by everyone today, including the BMZA. Our favorable report was written from the perspective that on its most basic level, this would be just another zoning investigation conducted by our Special Investigations Unit. And with our understanding of that, we did not feel that that responsibility would be unduly burdensome. And any specific or technical questions can be directed at Deputy Commissioner Hessler. Thank you.
Great. Do we have any questions for Housing Department, Finance Department, Small Business? Did we already heard DOT? DOT, I'm going to do DOT real quick, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Christian McNeil with DOT. We stand by our report without recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions for any of these agencies? I'm going to go to the Vice Chair.
Chris, with small business, I guess listening to all this, what are some ways that your office can help, or do any of these smoke shops contact your office for grants or any specific education piece?
I don't have any awareness of any technical assistance or reach outs from smoke shops. I will say we obviously have had feedback from the community, Main Streets, about the proliferation of smoke shops in those areas. So one of those things when we were talking about being able to identify smoke shops post passage of this bill, one of the things I would want to do is really do a little bit more advocacy and campaigning and communication with the Main Streets to make sure when new shops are established that they're flagging that to see if they potentially are an illegal smoke shop, and try to do what we can to really identify who is operating legally and illegally, because we want to really, as soon as possible, remove the illegal businesses from the community, and that'll go a long way of what we're trying to do with the bill.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this goes back to what Director Tiso was bringing up, what Eric was bringing up for us. As one of the things I think from the Planning Commission around, say large single commercial properties, and we were speaking about this yesterday, I think, or the day before. Large commercial properties, say a mall, a strip mall, enclosed or otherwise, that have multiple leased tenants across a large area, and the possibility that the bill as written, specific to property lines, as opposed to maybe the rented space, the leased space within a larger commercial structure. I think it raises interesting questions around where ought we to be measuring from. Another bill I'm working on had this exact same language, and so we spent some good amount of time after that conversation thinking about, especially because I called a friend who works at a retail establishment selling another product precisely in that situation, and we were talking about whether his shop would true up these rules or not, and what was actually fair in that regard. So just for the purpose of the author, and also for our colleagues and for the representative of the agencies, just to raise that here as well. Does it make more sense in if it's a Mondawmin Mall, for example, or if it's a 800-foot long strip mall, where we're measuring from. We were playing around with language of the distance measured from the edge of the lease space as defined in the contract with the property owner, something like that. So just to raise that, not to complicate things and mess things up, but which, it does complicate things, but I appreciated Eric bringing it to our attention and giving us the chance to think about, even if it made it a little bit more complicated, if it was more fair to a certain extent, so.
And I'm happy to add some color commentary if that's helpful. Okay. So yes, looking at a couple of different ways of how this could be potentially administered. We looked at a few different ways because there's other jurisdictions that measure from the front door of the establishment. There's a couple different ways to do it. So at least as a starting point with the resources that we have and knowing this is going to be difficult to administer, one of the simplest ways is property boundary to property boundary. It's very GIS-able. They were able to crank out a map for me, late last night that we can show what that would look like, and we can find the parcels that are not in those shaded areas and say yes or no, you're eligible. Beyond that, now it comes time to have to send somebody physically out there to figure out, get the yardstick out, can we do it in this location or not? At least as a starting point, the more conservative path is property boundary to property boundary. And the example I used in our meeting is if you were a vendor in the middle of Mondawmin Mall, that 500 or even 1,500 feet could be within the property boundaries still. That would be the perfect case for a variance of that distance. So that would be the conservative place to stand from, at least as a start. And then if we need to look at that, if there's practical difficulty, we could look at other things, but I will preload in with that. Our zoning staff, there's 5 of them that, including the zoning administrator himself, that look at these applications on the way in. And very frequently they have to ask applicants a lot of detailed questions to make a determination on can the use be approved over the counter or not. And so that measurement methodology, if it's not, I can look at a GIS product and say yes or no. Now I've got to figure out who's going to go out there, get out the yardstick and figure out the yes or no. So that's why we recommended this path, just because of its ease of administration, but of course we're willing to discuss further. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Blanchard, sponsor, I think, did you have a question for small business? I saw you were, or a comment.
A brief comment for small business and then a question to go back to this licensing conversation. I'll just, for small business, I'll say if it helps on the Main Street side, to cut to the chase, there is no spot in any Main Street in the city that would be allowed to have a new, because there's so many smoke shops on all of the main streets right now that when this passes, there will be no opportunity for any new smoke shop to open on any main street. So just to clarify that point. I think probably a very important and probably the trickiest part of this great conversation that we've been having this morning is around this idea of identifying who are the existing places that get grandfathered in, right, and are the set bases that we measure for the other to the other properties and whatnot from. And I don't think we had so that I like the idea of saying, hey, in the next 180 days, right, so anyone who's got anyone who has a legal license and meets the other requirements on March 26, 2026, you have 180 days to come in and get, registered so you get grandfathered in. But what I'm concerned about is because of this whole conversation, I think all of these establishments would be getting preempted because there's a state preemption problem because it's a state license that we're considering. So I guess, do we think that we actually can do that legally? That's a really important question.
I can jump in briefly. I think if we're talking about trying to license the business or trying to something that looks like a license of the business, I think we're in real danger of being preempted by the extensive state regulatory scheme. Now, whether or not we could simply ask businesses that would qualify as smoke shops under this bill to register, just to have a registry in order to help enforcement, I haven't looked into that specific question, but that seems less problematic, and I'd be happy to sort of run a quick legal analysis on that.
Can I add some context? And as a former liquor license practitioner, I think this is a well-worn path where, as Deputy Commissioner Hessler mentioned, that the liquor board requires before you apply for a liquor license, you go submit a UNO or a proof from zoning that you can do your use, sell liquor or do a bar or restaurant in this location. So that'd be my ideal scheme. And so there's a well-worn path to have some state and city connection as generally. So that I think that would still be allowed if we keep this in the zoning realm as is. I do think it'd be cleaner, again, to have the state, either state license take this on or state gives us the authority. I think politically, I suspect our state partners would be happy to work with us either to give us that authority or to make the state authorities take on this task. I think it's such an important and such a big thing. And I guess the other consideration is though, like if we're trying to attack the illegality, we probably have existing tools already to do that. Like existing sales are happening. We should just do more enforcement either on the businesses or start doing padlocking. If they're annoying, that's where Councilman Gray's bill is, like the lighting. That's annoying. We should be cracking down on the lights and the signage and that stuff, which we don't like. And if it's a bad mix of businesses or retail districts, I agree. That might be something more for zoning. If it's just a bad mix, we don't want that kind of stuff. We don't want 5 retail smoke shops on a main street. That probably is the zoning piece. Maybe we should be more draconian and phase it out because if we don't, as a policy matter, probably don't care that they're gone. So throwing those out there as considerations as we talk about this going forward.
Thank you. I'd like to, to the sponsor, yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I still don't know where we land on this. What maybe going back to Mr. Hochstetter's idea, can we just go find all the legally licensed smoke shops who have more than 10 linear feet, right, and say, can we ask them to register or just put them in a database so that way we can use this to do the GIS measurements? The zoning administrator could use it for, I don't even think we need their inputs, right? Like we just make the map and then we move forward from there?
The issue is still the self-reporting. So unless we proactively or have a Google Maps image of the store, we wouldn't know that they have 10 feet or more or that they have or 25% of the sales are exempt,
Just to briefly brief the committee chair. I'm just, my concern is just to make sure that this idea of having the 180-day to register if you are licensed, right? Like, are we allowed to do that because all of these businesses have having state licenses to sell the product, right? So is there a state preemption problem?
I think that's the question I would need to look into. If you're saying that the protection of nonconformity wouldn't apply if somebody doesn't register within a certain amount of time, I'm not comfortable opining on the legality of that right now because I haven't looked into it.
Yeah, I'd like, we have a lot of folks who have a lot of experience seeing all the ways that people can skirt regulation and whatnot, and I recognize like we're not gonna get a finished product on this first go round, right? We're not gonna get the silver bullet yet. It's gonna be a really solid like bronze bullet or whatever. And we'll have to follow up. I think that we say, all right, who's got the licenses, right? There's 253 of them in the city, right? And we just go and we just make a map, and then that way the zoning, really all we need is a database for the zoning administrators team, going back to Mr. Tisso's point, to look at it and say, okay, you're less than 1,500 feet from another one of these places, you can't do it, and if they dispute it, then we can sort of dig more into it, or they could potentially go to the zoning appeals board and then say, hey, is this other place, is it actually is this actually a smoke shop or not, right? But I think that I think we can do what we need to do for this bill to have a big impact with the bill and the amendments that are before us. And I'm just worried about this question of preemption and how this would play out in courts to try to add on to that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
My concern is for the potential for opportunity lost. I think that we don't get a second bite at the apple if we want to establish this initial period for allowing businesses that already exist in a way that meets this definition, allowing them to register for this new use permit without having to go through the conditional process. I think in addition to just gathering the data, the idea of the possibility that we put everybody on notice. I mean, we pass laws in the city and the public is on notice that we passed these laws, and that's the way it is now. And then if they fail to take this opportunity that we're giving in 180 days to get that permit, then we can come back to them and say, you're operating without a proper use and occupancy permit. I know that maybe it's different with licensing than it is with zoning law, and I'd like to give ourselves the opportunity to get a clear answer on that, but I know for a fact that we have done this with licensing laws, right? We definitely 100% did this with short-term rentals, where we said that going forth after the passage of the short-term rentals bill, nobody could have short-term rentals except for in the homes that they occupy as their principal residence, except if you had one or more short-term rentals in non-owner occupied properties as of the date of the introduction of the bill, then you could keep one but not more than one to continue operating. So not only did we say that you can only keep one, but that also means like you have to shut down all the others. I don't know what you're doing with them. You need to turn them into long-term rental apartments or sell them to somebody. It's not our problem. We're telling you that you can only have one, and only if you had it operating properly as a short-term rental at the time when we introduced the bill, not even the date of the passage of the bill. And so I think that we do have like one bite at the apple to potentially be able to say, well, 180 days from now, half of these smoke shops in the city will have failed to register with us for this new UNO that we're creating no barriers to, right? You don't even need to go to the zoning board. You just need to fill out the application. You submit the whatever paperwork. And then half of them are out of compliance, and we can come back to them and say, if you want to continue to operate, you can come to the zoning board if you're not closer than 1,000 feet to a school or whatever, and if not, you're SOL.
Thank you for that explanation, Mr. Chair. My thought is that right, it's the legally licensed places that would be grandfathered in.
Yeah.
Right, and there's substantial number of businesses that are not. And so this feels like the businesses we would be catching with this registry requirement is just kind of hoping that some of the legally licensed places just won't get around, like notice the requirement to register. And I'm not losing any tears over that, but it feels like a sort of an odd way to go about it. And I would be fine with it if, like, to the short-term rentals, there wasn't a state license situation. I think the more applicable situation, it sounds like, is this conversation with the liquor establishments, right? Because there's a state liquor license. And so I'm just very squeamish that this would get, dragged down the courts, and like, that stuff takes forever.
Yeah.
And so I just, maybe the deputy commissioner could talk a little bit about if you feel like this possibility of requiring a registration would fit more like the short-term rentals or more like the liquor license establishments.
Yeah, and let me also be clear, like, I am considering the potential for opportunity or conversely, opportunity loss if we don't make a change. But I also think it's sort of dubious in the first place. Mr. Hessler.
So I will opine as best I can. I'm not sure that the registration process, to me, seems very close to a licensing process, which then seems to step on the toes of the state. I think that the better process was the use and occupancy requirement, in the sense that any shops that are out there operating as what would then now be defined as a smoke shop should have some time frame to get a new use and occupancy permit that makes them a smoke shop. The one piece I didn't think of before this bill, but thought of here today, is that we would need to also, I think, amend the building code, because there's a section in the building code, 105.17, which requires about 20 different uses to update and get a new use and occupancy permit at the change of ownership or change of operator. And currently, retail goods establishments are included in that 20. Smoke shop would not be, because it doesn't exist. The other 20 include things like restaurants, taverns, gas stations, things, big box stores. So I'll add that in, but I think that it is going to be challenging for us to determine who existed and who didn't exist, and it will be a process to figure out, going to the state, checking on their license, seeing who had that license, comparing it to the use and occupancy, and then, measuring out the distances. There's a lot of steps in there that a good defense attorney could punch a hole in.
I'll also say that that is the minimum distances between smoke shops, and the majority of the commercially zoned properties in the city are inside the minimum distance radius from a school, park, or rec center. And that one is obviously a much cleaner, determination. So it is a reduction, like the number of properties who you have to meet both of those minimum distance requirements, right? And the minimum distance between smoke shops will be challenging for us to figure out. But the minimum distance from the other places will be super straightforward to figure out. And so, in of itself, that's there would be some like weird properties on the margins, but for the most part, you're either within 1,000 feet or you're outside 1,000 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
I want to make sure we still don't have any audio from WebEx. Okay. Do we have anybody here to give testimony in person? We do. We have. Okay. Great. Eva. Great. I'm going to do public testimony, and then we'll carry on. Just hit the button on the right there. The light should come on red on the microphone.
Okay.
Tell us who you are. And if you represent an organization or anything, tell us that, and we'll give you 2 minutes.
Okay. Good morning, council members. My name is Ava Hodgson. I am a resident of downtown, and I serve on the board of multiple economic development organizations in the downtown area. I come before you to express my support of this legislation. We need action on the unchecked proliferation of smoke shops across Baltimore City. Within 2 blocks of my apartment, there are 8 smoke shops. 8. These shops are saturating our blocks faster than any other business. Density of these smoke shops with their bright LED signs advertising Delta 8, vapes, tobacco products, and paraphernalia. Their ubiquitousness physically normalize the use of nicotine and synthetic drugs in our communities. They increase youth smoking and nicotine rates, worsen health disparities, and disproportionately harm minority and low-income communities. Baltimore has already suffered enough from preventable health crises. We should not make it easy to sell harm on every corner, especially when that harm disproportionately targets our children. Beyond the health effects on our neighbors, they are detrimental to the vitality of our economic communities. Oversaturation of any business, but especially ones that peddle harm, weaken our economic corridors, main streets, and neighborhoods. Other cities have enacted similar legislation. Baltimore can too. Baltimore deserves businesses that invest in us, not businesses that profit and proliferate off our deterioration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That's the only person we have signed up here for in-person testimony. I would go to WebEx, but we were having difficulties with that earlier. We're going to put somebody on speakerphone here in just a second, who the sponsor had specifically arranged to have give testimony today.
Hey, Laura, hang on 1 second. Can you restart, please?
Sure. Hello, this is Laura Hale. I'm with the American Heart Association, here in strong support of this legislation. We have seen similar legislation work across the country, especially with our neighbors to the north. Pennsylvania has been expanding by using zoning authority to address this issue. Some of the key pieces as well to this is that Baltimore City has a higher level of licensed tobacco establishments than any other jurisdiction in the entire state. And the density as well, we see high numbers near schools at a level that we do not see anywhere else in the state of Maryland. being able to address this through your zoning authority is an extremely supportive and creative way to look at how we can reduce tobacco use, especially among our young adults. We are seeing for the first time in Maryland that the high school tobacco use rate is now above the use for adults. And so policies like this are one great way to continue to do this, and we urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'd like to take a 5-minute recess to confer with the bill sponsor before any further proceeding, but I do want to try to wrap this up pretty quickly here after that. So just give us 5 minutes. Thanks. We see some value. The chair, the sponsor and I talked about this, and we think that there's some value in giving ourselves a little time to develop an amendment and to just seek a little bit more guidance here on this concept of creating an opportunity for existing businesses to get a use and occupancy permit for this definition, this new definition. And so we want to take a beat on this, and we will come back to this on April 16th. We already have a couple of bills scheduled to be heard starting at 9 a.m. that day. And so we will put this onto the agenda for April 16th to continue this hearing. For now, we're in recess. Thank you.